If the power went out for 1 hour, most people would be fine. You light a candle, use your phone flashlight, maybe check outside, maybe complain for a few minutes. But if the power stayed out for 7 days, everything changes. Your fridge becomes a countdown, your freezer becomes a problem, your stove might not work, your microwave is useless, your normal meals suddenly disappear, and that is when people realize something uncomfortable. A full kitchen does not always mean you have usable food. You may have food in the house, but if it needs refrigeration, cooking, freezing, or constant electricity, it stops being reliable very quickly. That is why the foods that matter most during a 7-day outage are not always the foods people expect. They are not fancy. They are not exciting. They are simple foods that still work when everything else becomes inconvenient. Let's get straight into the foods that matter most. The first one is peanut butter. Peanut butter does not look dramatic. It sits quietly in the cupboard. Most people treat it like a sandwich spread. But during a long power outage, peanut butter becomes one of the most useful foods in the house. It does not need cooking, it does not need refrigeration, it gives you calories, fat, and some protein. And it is extremely easy to eat. That matters. Because during a 7-day power outage, the problem is not just hunger. The problem is energy. People underestimate how quickly they feel tired when normal meals disappear. A few spoonfuls of peanut butter can keep you going when you do not feel like preparing anything complicated. It also works with other foods. Crackers, tortillas, oats, bread if you still have it. Even on its own, it does the job. That is why peanut butter disappears quickly when people start thinking practically. It is not glamorous. It works. The second food is canned beans. This is one of the strongest pantry foods you can have. Canned beans are already cooked. That one detail makes a huge difference. Dry beans are useful long-term, but they need soaking, cooking, fuel, time, and water. Canned beans skip all of that. You open the can, and they are ready. Not exciting, not perfect, but usable. Beans give you fiber, carbohydrates, and some protein. They are filling in a way many lighter foods are not. During a 7-day outage, staying full matters more than people expect. A snack that leaves you hungry again in 30 minutes does not help much. Beans stay with you. They also combine well with other foods. Beans with tortillas. Beans with rice if you can cook. Beans with canned meat. Beans with crackers if you have nothing else. They stretch meals. That is what makes them valuable. Not just the can itself, but what it helps create. The third food is canned tuna. Protein becomes important fast. Most people rely heavily on fresh meat, eggs, dairy, or frozen food. All of those become harder to manage when power stays out for days. Canned tuna solves that problem. It is shelf-stable, ready to eat, easy to portion, and high in protein. That is exactly why it matters. Tuna packed in oil can be especially useful because it gives more calories than tuna packed in water. That does not mean one is always better. It depends on what you need. But during a situation where food has to keep you going, calories matter. People often think of tuna as lunch. In a power outage, it becomes one of the simplest protein sources you can rely on. You can eat it with crackers, put it in a tortilla, mix it with beans, eat it straight from the can if needed. That flexibility is what makes it useful. The fourth food is canned chicken. Canned chicken is not exciting either, but that is exactly the point. During a 7-day power outage, you do not need impressive food. You need food that still works. Canned chicken is familiar. Most people know how to use it. It can be eaten straight. It can be mixed with wraps. It can be combined with shelf-stable sauces. It can turn a basic meal into something more filling. That matters because food fatigue becomes real. Eating the same thing again and again wears people down. Canned chicken gives you another option. It feels closer to a normal meal than many emergency foods. The main thing to watch is texture. Some canned chicken is dry, some is better. That is why it helps to buy foods you have actually tried before. A power outage is not the best time to discover you hate half your pantry. The fifth food is crackers. Crackers are easy to dismiss. They feel too simple, but they solve a very specific problem. They give structure to other foods. Peanut butter becomes easier to eat. Tuna becomes a meal. Canned chicken becomes more practical. Beans become less boring. Crackers are not the star. They are the base. That is why they matter. They do not need cooking. They do not need refrigeration. They are easy to ration, and they can sit in a pantry for a long time if stored properly. During a 7-day outage, foods like this become more useful than people expect because they reduce effort, and effort matters. The longer the power stays out, the less people want complicated food. They want something simple, something quick, something that works. Crackers do that. The sixth food is tortillas. This is where many people make a smart choice over bread. Bread is useful, but it can spoil quickly. Tortillas usually last longer. They take up less space. They are easier to store, and they turn basic pantry items into actual meals. A spoonful of peanut butter on its own is fine. Peanut butter wrapped in a tortilla feels like food. Tuna on its own is fine. Tuna in a tortilla feels like lunch. Beans on their own are useful. Beans in a wrap feel more complete. That is the power of tortillas. They make simple food easier to eat repeatedly. And during a 7-day outage, repetition is one of the biggest hidden problems. People do not just need calories. They need food they can tolerate day after day. Tortillas help with that. And once you understand that, they stop looking like a small item. They become one of the most practical foods in the house. The seventh food is oats. Oats are one of the best foods to have when power stays out for days. They are cheap, filling, easy to store, and much more flexible than people think. Most people imagine oats as hot breakfast, but oats can also be soaked. They can be mixed with shelf-stable milk. They can be combined with dried fruit. They can be sweetened with honey. They can even be eaten in a rough, simple way if options are limited. The important thing is that oats keep people full. That is their strength. Some foods give quick energy and then disappear from your system fast. Oats last longer. They digest more slowly. They create a sense of fullness that helps stretch everything else. During a 7-day outage, stretching food becomes important. Not because everyone is starving, but because nobody knows exactly how long things will last. When you have a food that helps reduce hunger for hours, it becomes valuable. Oats also create routine. That sounds small, but it matters. If the power is out and everything feels disrupted, having something simple for breakfast makes the day feel more manageable. People underestimate routine until it disappears. Oats help restore a little of it. The eighth food is ready-to-eat soup, stew, or chili. This category matters because it feels like a meal. Not every canned soup is useful. Thin broth soups may not keep you full for long, but thicker soups, stews, and chili can make a big difference. Beef stew, lentil soup, chunky vegetable soup, chili with beans. These are more practical because they offer substance. You can eat them cold if you have to. Most people prefer them hot, of course. But during a power outage, the question is not always what you prefer. The question is what still works. And ready-to-eat meals work. They give variety. They give comfort. They reduce preparation. That is important because stress changes appetite. Some people do not feel like eating much during disruption. Others keep reaching for snacks because they never feel satisfied. A thick canned meal can help settle that. It also saves effort. No chopping, no cooking, no recipe, just open and eat. That simplicity becomes more valuable with every day the power stays out. The ninth food is nuts and trail mix. Small foods can be powerful if they are dense. Nuts are a perfect example. Almonds, peanuts, cashews, walnuts, trail mix with dried fruit. These foods do not look like much in the hand, but they carry a lot of energy. That is why they are useful. During a 7-day outage, not every meal will be a proper meal. Sometimes people need something quick, something they can grab while dealing with other things. Checking on family, managing supplies, sorting out lighting, protecting food in the freezer. A handful of nuts can keep energy steady. They also require no preparation, no water, no heat, no fridge. That makes them extremely reliable. The caution is portion control. It is easy to eat too much quickly because they are small. That is why rationing matters. But if used wisely, nuts and trail mix are some of the easiest foods to keep around. They are compact, useful, and practical. The 10th food is dried fruit. This one matters more than people expect. Fresh fruit spoils. Refrigerated fruit has a time limit, but dried fruit lasts much longer and still gives sweetness, flavor, and quick energy. Raisins, dates, apricots, figs, dried apples. These foods help break the monotony. That is important. People often talk about survival food as if taste does not matter, but after several days, taste absolutely matters. If everything is salty, plain, or repetitive, people start losing interest in eating properly. Dried fruit helps with that. It gives a different texture, a different flavor, a small psychological lift. It also works with oats, nuts, peanut butter crackers, and other pantry foods. That combination makes it stronger than it looks. The 11th food is honey. Honey is not a meal, but it is still extremely useful. It stores well, it adds quick energy, it improves bland foods. It makes oats better. It helps with tea if you can heat water. It can make repetitive pantry meals feel less miserable. That matters during a week without power. Honey is also one of the few foods people associate with long-term storage for good reason. When kept properly, it can last a very long time. It may crystallize, but that does not mean it is ruined. The real value of honey is not just sweetness, it is morale. A small amount can make simple foods easier to eat. And when people are tired, stressed, or frustrated, that can matter more than expected. The 12th food is powdered milk or shelf-stable milk. Fresh milk becomes a problem quickly without refrigeration. That affects breakfast, tea, coffee, children, baking, and routine. Powdered milk solves part of that problem. Shelf-stable milk does too, as long as it is unopened and stored properly. This is one of those foods people forget until they need it. Then suddenly, it feels important. It works with oats, it supports baking, it helps replace something many households use daily. That is why it belongs on the list. Not because it is exciting, because it fills a gap that fresh milk leaves behind. And in a 7-day outage, those gaps become obvious quickly. At this point, the pattern becomes clear. The foods that matter most during a 7-day power outage are not random. They share a few important qualities. They do not need refrigeration. They require little or no cooking. They can be eaten in more than one way. They give energy. They help people stay full. And they reduce stress. That last part matters more than most people realize. A power outage is not just a food problem. It is a routine problem. The normal way people live gets interrupted. Breakfast changes. Dinner changes, shopping changes, cooking changes. Even opening the fridge becomes something you think twice about. That is why usable food matters more than stored food. Those are not the same thing. A freezer full of meat might look impressive, but after several days without power, it becomes a race against time. A pantry with peanut butter, crackers, oats, beans, tuna, tortillas, nuts, and canned meals may look less impressive, but it keeps working. That is the difference. One depends on the system continuing, the other keeps going when the system stops. That is also why people should think in combinations, not just individual items. Peanut butter with crackers, tuna with tortillas, beans with wraps, oats with dried fruit and honey, soup with crackers, nuts with dried fruit, canned chicken with tortillas. These combinations turn basic pantry foods into meals. And meals matter. People do better when food feels like food, not just random items. That is one of the reasons many people struggle during disruptions. They have ingredients, but no plan. They have cans, but no can opener. They have rice, but no way to cook it. They have frozen food, but no way to keep it safe. They have snacks, but nothing filling. A 7-day outage exposes those gaps fast. The first day feels manageable. The second day feels annoying. By the third day, people start thinking differently. By the fourth day, the fridge and freezer become serious concerns. By the fifth day, repetition becomes exhausting. By the sixth day, people want anything that feels normal. By the seventh day, the households with practical pantry foods are in a very different position from those relying only on fresh and frozen food. That is why this topic matters. Not because everyone should live in fear. Because most households are more dependent on electricity than they realize. Food storage has quietly changed over time. Older households often had deeper pantries, more dry goods, more canned foods, more shelf-stable basics. Modern households often have more fresh food, more frozen food, and more convenience meals. That works beautifully when power is reliable, but it becomes fragile when power disappears. The lesson is not to stop using refrigerators. Refrigerators are useful. The lesson is to not depend on them completely. A balanced kitchen has both. Fresh food for normal days. Shelf-stable food for uncertain days. That is the smarter approach. It gives flexibility. And flexibility is what keeps people calm. If power stayed out for 7 days, people would not be wishing they bought luxury foods. They would wish they had foods that still worked. Foods they could open. Foods they could combine. Foods that kept them full. Foods that did not spoil quickly. Foods that made the week feel manageable. That is why these foods matter most, not because they are dramatic, because they are dependable. And when everything else stops working, dependable becomes the most valuable thing in the kitchen.